Hey, Dan Fitzpatrick here, stockmarketmentor.com, and I want to look at biotech today. Now, generally speaking, in this market, the just breakouts have not been working. They were a while ago. It's funny how the market kind of goes in cycles. What was working last week or last month or several months ago is not working now. That's just the way it goes. We have to get used to it. You better be used to it. But a couple months ago, even a month ago, breakouts were working pretty well. Well, all those breakouts have already broken out. And now we're in the other part of the phase where we're actually just kind of looking for continuation trades. We're looking to buy pullbacks within uptrending stocks. The easy money has been made with respect to buying a strong stock on a breakout because it's a bona fide breakout. If it's a valid one, it's going to go a ways and it's going to reward you for acting, for taking action at the right time. That's why we like breakouts. They tend to give us good profits really, really fast when they work. But they don't work when the market's really, really heavy. And the market has been pretty heavy. The Magnificent Seven haven't been doing much at all. There's just not a lot of real positive pin action, I would say, in the market. And so we have to trade accordingly. Now, with that said, there's actually two areas that are working pretty well. Only one of them I'm going to show you today. The two that I think are working really well now are gold or precious metal stocks, and then also some biotech. They're not really correlated with the rest of the market. Like if you're in some biotech company, you really don't care what Caterpillar's doing, or they don't really relate to each other. Same thing with gold. If you're in gold, like, do you really care what Ford or General Motors are doing or Walmart's doing? So these are all kind of different discrete trades, discrete themes, and we're seeing some pretty good price action in those areas. But I just want to look at one chart, and I'm being real general here, and that's biotech, the XBI. Now, there's another one. You can do the IBB. This has 1.8 million shares, 1.6 million shares. I'm a big fan of XBI because the liquidity is much more. Now, either one is fine. When you get in the millions of shares, you're good. Buy as much as you want. You're not going to move the chart. But here with 9.2 million, I like this. So what I like about this is that it's tightening up here right along the 50-day moving average, which is actually starting to be flat. It's starting to flatten. This is what we want to see. We want to see a breakout from a flat moving average. I don't think we're quite there yet to where you can expect this kind of move, but I think we're close. And so what I want you to do is just watch how this stock trades. It needs to stay above the 50-day moving average. I'll set a price alert just for me right down there. If this falls down and hits this price alert, I don't want to be involved in this. So this is kind of my drop dead zone here. But if you're long this stock, that's fine. I think a lot of you are. Well, 9 million shares traded. Hell, somebody owns it. But watch for the stock. If it does break out above here, look for a little pause at 130 just because stocks tend to pause at even numbers. But then if it runs farther than that, you're probably going to get a trade maybe to 135. Doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're able to start with a pretty tight stop, like just less than 2%, just a little bit below the 50-day moving average, then if the stock does come up here, that's over 7% just to get you up here. And that's a really good return on a small amount of risk. So I want you to always be thinking about trading in terms of R multiples instead of just how many dollars did I make or what percentage gain did I make? Everything has to start with risk. You start with risk first. Once you've built your trade so that you know exactly what your risk is, now you start looking for the reward. Okay. And I talk more about that at Stock Market Mentor. So if you are not a member, I'm inviting you to join me, $7. How good is that? Okay. I'm just telling you. So, okay. Listen, I will see you guys. I'll see you guys next time. Okay. Have a good one.